Your reign ends now.
You know that feeling when you're absolutely certain something good is about to happen? That electric buzz running through your chest, palms getting sweaty, mentally planning how you'll spend money that isn't yours yet? That was me strutting into the boardroom that Tuesday morning like I owned the damn place. Spoiler, I owned exactly nothing. 6 brutal months. Half a year of soul-crushing, coffee-fueled labor fixing every broken disaster in that godforsaken company. I'm talking legacy code that looked like caffeinated monkeys wrote it during a hurricane. Database queries so inefficient they made dial-up internet look blazing fast. Security protocols about as secure as a screen door on a submarine. But I never complained. I rolled up my sleeves and dove headfirst into that digital dumpster fire like some tech superhero nobody asked for. I debugged systems broken since the Obama years. I optimized servers running slower than a 3-legged turtle in molasses. I even trained new interns who genuinely thought Python was something at the zoo, not a programming language that could actually pay their student loans. So there I was, walking into that boardroom radiating the confidence of someone who'd earned every penny of the raise he was about to receive. The morning sun streamed through those floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in this golden, almost Hollywood movie glow. I'd even worn my good shirt, you know, the one without mysterious coffee stains that had probably achieved sentience at some point. I settled into that leather chair like taking my rightful throne. The boardroom table was this massive oak beast that probably cost more than my car, surrounded by chairs that made you feel important just sitting in them. My laptop was open, presentation ready because I'd prepared for this moment like it was the Super Bowl of career advancement. "I'm excited for my raise," I announced, flashing what I thought was my most winning smile. The words came out with all the enthusiasm of a kid on Christmas morning who just spotted a PlayStation-shaped present under the tree. That's when reality decided to drop-kick me in the face. My wife, and yes, before you start thinking this story couldn't get any more awkward, let me clarify that she was also my boss, because apparently the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Didn't even bother looking up from her artisanal latte. She was scrolling through something on her phone with the kind of casual indifference usually reserved for reading grocery store circulars. She chuckled. Actually chuckled, like I just told her the world's lamest dad joke instead of expressing legitimate excitement about advancing my career. "What raise?" she said, still not making eye contact. "I gave it to Mark." Now, I've been sucker punched before, both literally and metaphorically, but this felt like getting hit by a freight train made of disappointment and marital confusion. The words hung in the air like a bad smell that everyone pretends not to notice. Michelle from HR, you know the type, the woman who treats company policy like it's the freaking Constitution, nodded with the enthusiasm of a bobblehead doll having a seizure. She slid a stack of paperwork across that polished table with the kind of practiced efficiency that suggested she'd done this song and dance before. I looked down at those papers, hoping maybe this was some kind of elaborate prank. Maybe Mark would jump out from behind a potted plant yelling, "Gotcha!" And we'd all have a good laugh before getting to the real business of discussing my salary bump. But no. There it was in black and white, bold as you please. Mark's name on the promotion paperwork. Mark's name with a shiny new title. Mark's name attached to a salary that had more zeros than I'd seen since my last student loan statement. My name? Nowhere to be found. Not even as a footnote or an honorable mention. I might as well have been invisible, like some kind of workplace ghost haunting the IT department. And then, because apparently the universe wasn't done using my dignity as a punching bag, Mark himself walked in. Mark, with his perfectly styled hair and his smirk that made him look like he'd just gotten away with stealing candy from a baby. Mark, who couldn't debug a Hello World program without calling for backup. "Oops," he said, not looking even remotely sorry. "Forgot to tell you. Forgot to tell me." Like my entire career trajectory was some minor detail he'd misplaced between his morning Starbucks run and his lunch meeting. Like 6 months of my blood, sweat, and questionable life choices were just a little oversight on his part. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only about 30 seconds, processing this information. The silence in that room was so thick you could have cut it with a butter knife. Everyone was looking at me, waiting to see how I'd react. Would I explode? Would I cry? Would I start throwing office supplies like some kind of corporate berserker? Instead, I did something that probably surprised everyone, including myself. I smiled. Not a happy smile, mind you. This was the kind of smile that serial butchers probably practice in the mirror. The kind of smile that says I'm filing this moment away in my mental revenge folder for later use. I stood up slowly, deliberately, like I had all the time in the world. My hands were steady as I gathered my things. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose my cool. Just calm, calculated movements. I picked up my coffee mug, the one with the faded, world's okayest employee text that had seemed funny when I bought it, but now felt prophetic. I grabbed my desk plant, a sad little succulent that had somehow survived the toxic environment of that office better than I had. And finally, my trusty USB drive loaded with more of my work than Mark had probably produced in his entire career. No dramatic speech, no Jerry Maguire moment where I storm out yelling about how they'll all regret this. Just a simple, sarcastic smile and the sound of my footsteps echoing down that marble hallway as I made my exit. But as I walked toward the elevator, briefcase in one hand and wounded pride in the other, one thought kept echoing in my mind. Y'all have no idea what storm you just ordered off the menu. They thought they were getting rid of a problem employee. What they'd actually done was create their worst nightmare. A guy with nothing left to lose, intimate knowledge of all their systems, and a burning desire to watch their little kingdom crumble. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I couldn't help but laugh. Game on! My apartment, a modest two-bedroom, in what real estate agents generously called an up-and-coming neighborhood, suddenly transformed from a place where I crash between 16-hour workdays into something that looked like the Pentagon Situation Room had a baby with a conspiracy theorist's basement. I started with the living room. Out went the coffee table where I used to prop my feet up while binge-watching Netflix and questioning my life choices. In came a folding table from IKEA that I assembled with the kind of focused intensity usually reserved for defusing bombs. That table became my command center, ground zero for what I was already mentally calling Operation You Done Messed Up. The walls, previously decorated with the kind of generic art you buy at Target when you're trying to convince yourself you're a real adult, got covered in whiteboards. 3 of them arranged like a triptych of corporate vengeance. The middle one became my timeline, a detailed chronicle of every project, every fix, every late night I'd spent making their systems actually work. The left board was for evidence. Screenshots, email chains, Slack conversations. The right board, that was for strategy, baby. Sticky notes became my new best friends. Pink ones for priority items, yellow for evidence, green for potential leverage, and red for what I like to call nuclear options. My apartment started looking like a rainbow exploded, but it was a beautiful, organized explosion that would make Marie Kondo weep tears of pride. My laptop, a trusty old ThinkPad that had survived more coffee spills than a barista's apron, hummed like an overworked espresso machine as I dove into my digital treasure trove. See, here's the thing about being the guy who fixes everything. You end up with copies of everything: email backups, system logs, chat histories, code repositories, project documentation, basically every digital breadcrumb that proved exactly who had been doing what around that place. And Mark, oh sweet, clueless Mark, that golden boy had been leaving a trail of incompetence so obvious it was practically neon. Remember that time he submitted a revolutionary new algorithm to the CTO? I had 17 different Slack messages where he literally asked me to rewrite this so I sound smart. The time he claimed credit for optimizing the database, I had the JIT commits showing it was 100% my code, complete with timestamps proving I'd written it at 2 a.m. while he was probably at home practicing his acceptance speech. The beautiful thing about working for a company run by people who thought digital native meant someone born after the internet was invented was that they had absolutely zero understanding of the digital paper trail they'd been creating. Every passive-aggressive email, every dismissive comment, every time they'd asked me to fix something quickly without putting it in the budget, all of it was documented, backed up, and now spread across my living room like evidence in a crime scene. I barely slept that first week. Who needs sleep when you're fueled by pure, concentrated pettiness and leftover pizza? I survived on a diet that would make nutritionists weep. Cold pizza for breakfast, energy drinks for lunch, and whatever I could order for delivery after midnight. My refrigerator looked like a museum exhibit titled The Bachelor, a study in poor life choices. But here's the thing about revenge. It's a dish best served with proper documentation and a solid paper trail. While my former colleagues were probably sleeping peacefully in their beds, secure in the knowledge that they'd successfully eliminated a problem employee, I was wide awake, building something beautiful. Something that would make their quarterly review look like a root canal performed by a blindfolded dentist. I created folders, so many folders. Mark's greatest hits contained every instance of his incompetence. Timeline of lies documented every promise they'd made and broken. System failures and my solutions was basically a love letter to my own indispensability. And, my personal favorite, things they don't want the audit committee to see. The best part? My loving wife had never made me sign a non-disclosure agreement. Apparently, she thought marrying me was enough of a gag order, like saying I do came with an implicit, and I won't air your company's dirty laundry in public clause. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Like new Coke levels of strategic blundering. I even set up a dedicated workspace in what used to be my guest bedroom. My old gaming chair, the one that had supported me through countless late-night coding sessions, got promoted to Command Central. I surrounded it with monitors I'd been collecting over the years, creating a setup that would make NASA's mission control jealous. 3 screens showing different aspects of my evidence collection, emails on one, code repositories on another, and social media monitoring on the third. Because, oh yes, I was watching their social media too. LinkedIn became my intelligence gathering platform of choice. Mark had already updated his profile with his new title, complete with a humble brag post about being excited to take on new challenges and lead innovative solutions. The comments section was a parade of congratulations from people who had no idea they were praising a guy whose greatest coding achievement was successfully copying and pasting from Stack Overflow without crashing the system. My wife's LinkedIn was even more entertaining. She posted something about making tough decisions in leadership and rewarding loyalty and excellence. The irony was so thick, you could have built a bridge with it and charged tolls. Every night, as I sat in my makeshift war room, surrounded by evidence of their stupidity, sipping gas station coffee that tasted like liquid regret, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months working for them. Genuine excitement. Not the naive Christmas morning excitement I'd felt walking into that boardroom, but something sharper, more focused, the kind of excitement a chess master feels when they're 17 moves ahead and their opponent doesn't even know they're already in check. There's something deeply satisfying about crafting the perfect email, not the rambling, passive-aggressive novels that most people send when they're pissed off. Those just make you look unhinged. No, I'm talking about the kind of email that's so politely devastating it should come with a hazmat warning, the kind that makes the recipient's blood pressure spike while simultaneously giving them nothing concrete to complain about. I spent 3 days perfecting mine. 3 glorious days of writing, rewriting, and fine-tuning every word until it was sharper than a Japanese chef's knife and twice as cutting. I must have gone through 40 different drafts, each one a little more polished, a little more terrifying in its professional courtesy. My apartment had become a writer's workshop dedicated to the fine art of corporate psychological warfare. The subject line was pure poetry. Final chance to fix your oops. Not final warning or last opportunity. Those would have been too aggressive, too obvious. No, oops was perfect. Casual, almost friendly, like I was giving them a heads up about a minor typo instead of offering them one last chance to avoid complete professional annihilation. The email itself was a masterpiece of restraint. 3 paragraphs tops. No emotional outbursts, no accusations, no demands. Just a gentle reminder of some documentation inconsistencies I'd noticed while organizing my personal files. A polite inquiry about whether they might want to clarify the record before certain information became part of the industry conversation. And finally, a cheerful note that I'd be happy to discuss any concerns they might have about maintaining professional accuracy in our respective career narratives. If you knew how to read between the lines, and anyone with half a brain cell would, it was essentially me saying, I have receipts, and you have 24 hours to make this right before I burn your house down with the truth. I hit send at exactly 9:47 a.m. on a Wednesday, right in that sweet spot when people are caffeinated enough to pay attention but not yet buried under their daily avalanche of meetings and manufactured crises. Then I sat back in my gaming chair, cracked open a Red Bull, and waited for the fireworks to begin. The response time was impressive. I'll give them that. 3 hours and 14 minutes. I was tracking it down to the second because, honestly, what else did I have to do? My phone buzzed with a text notification, and there it was. An email from my beloved wife with the subject line, "Let's talk." 2 words that, in the context of corporate damage control, basically translate to, "Holy crap, what do you have, and how much will it cost to make you go away?" But wait, it gets better. I was still savoring the beautiful simplicity of those 2 words when my laptop dinged with another email notification. This one was from Mark himself, and the subject line was so perfectly marked that I actually laughed out loud. "Hey man, it wasn't personal." "Oh, but it was personal, Mark. It was so personal that if personal was a cologne, you'd be bathing in it." The email was exactly what you'd expect from someone whose entire career strategy involved failing upward through a combination of charm, luck, and strategic incompetence. He rambled for 3 paragraphs about company needs and difficult decisions and hoping we could still be friends. It was like watching someone try to put out a forest fire with a squirt gun, adorable in its complete inadequacy. But here's where Mark made his fatal mistake. He tried to gaslight me. He actually wrote, and I'm quoting directly here because I screenshot everything, "I know you might think you did more work than you actually did, but leadership requires seeing the bigger picture. Leadership requires seeing the bigger picture." This from a guy who once asked me if HTML was a programming language and whether we needed to buy a subscription to use it. That's when I decided it was time to escalate from warning shots to nuclear options. See, while I'd been building my evidence collection in my living room command center, something interesting had happened in the corporate world. Our little company, the one that had just screwed me over so spectacularly, had gotten some attention. The kind of attention that comes with dollar signs and acquisition talks. A major tech firm had been sniffing around, interested in the innovative systems architecture and cutting-edge automation solutions that had been generating all that revenue they've been bragging about in board meetings. You know, all those systems that had been held together with digital duct tape and prayer until some mysterious coding wizard had swooped in and actually made them work. Guess who that wizard was? Spoiler alert, it wasn't Mark. So I did what any reasonable person would do when faced with someone trying to rewrite history in real time. I opened up my carefully organized files, selected every single piece of code that Mark had claimed credit for over the past 6 months, and zipped it all up into one beautiful, damning package. Then I composed another email, this one addressed to David Chen, CTO of the company that was currently in acquisition talks. The subject line, due diligence, code attribution documentation. Professional, helpful, absolutely terrifying if you were Mark. The email was a masterpiece of professional courtesy wrapped around a thermonuclear warhead. I explained that I'd noticed some potential confusion in the code attribution during what I assumed would be their technical due diligence process. I wanted to make sure they had accurate information about who had actually written what, just in case there were any questions about the intellectual property they'd be acquiring. Then I attached the zip file, gigabytes of code, complete with commit histories, timestamps, and comment threads that painted a very clear picture of who had been doing the actual work around there. Every function Mark had claimed as his own, every algorithm he'd presented as his brilliant innovation, every system optimization he'd taken credit for, all of it documented with the kind of forensic precision that would make the FBI jealous. But here's the beautiful part. I didn't send it just to David Chen. I BCC'd it to 3 other people. The lead technical architect at the acquiring company, Seth, the head of their IP legal department, and, this is my personal favorite, the journalist who'd been writing those glowing puff pieces about emerging tech talent in the industry. I hit send and immediately opened a new browser tab to LinkedIn. I wanted to watch Mark's world burn in real time. The results were even better than I'd hoped. Within an hour, Mark's congratulatory promotion post had vanished from LinkedIn like it had never existed. Not deleted, because that would leave a trace, but edited down to nothing, leaving behind only confused comments from people asking what had happened to the original post. By the end of the day, his profile had been updated with those 3 little words that strike fear into the heart of every corporate climber. Open to work. I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered that smirk, that casual oops, that condescending explanation about leadership and bigger pictures. And the sympathy evaporated faster than my patience in that boardroom. The beautiful thing about corporate drama is that it unfolds with all the subtlety of a soap opera written by someone who thinks subtlety is a type of seasoning. Within 48 hours of my little email to the acquisition team, Mark's LinkedIn presence went from rising corporate star to digital witness protection program. But the internet never forgets, and neither do screenshots. I'd captured everything the moment it went live, partly out of habit, and partly because I knew it would age like milk in a desert. My former colleagues started reaching out, not directly. That would have been too obvious. No, they used the time-honored tradition of accidentally running into me at the coffee shop near the office, or casually mentioning they'd heard I was doing well during conversations with mutual friends who they knew would report back to me. Sarah from accounting was the first to crack. We'd always been friendly. She was one of the few people there who actually understood that the guy fixing the servers at 3 a.m. might deserve more recognition than the guy showing up at 10 a.m. with designer coffee and a motivational quote. She texted me on a Thursday afternoon. Coffee? I have stories. We met at a little cafe 3 blocks from the office, far enough away that she wouldn't risk being seen by the wrong people, close enough that she could still claim she was just grabbing lunch if anyone asked. Sarah looked like she'd been through a corporate blender. That particular combination of exhausted and paranoid that comes from working somewhere that's actively imploding. They called an emergency board meeting, she whispered, leaning across the table like she was sharing state secrets. Michelle from HR looked like she was about to throw up. And your wife? Dude, I've never seen someone sweat through a blazer before, but she managed it. The audit had started. Not the gentle routine kind where someone comes in, checks a few boxes, and calls it a day. This was the full forensic treatment, the kind where they bring in people with briefcases and serious expressions who ask uncomfortable questions about documentation and accountability. They're going through everything, Sarah continued, stirring her latte with the kind of nervous energy that suggested she'd already had too much caffeine. Email logs, project files, code repositories. Someone, and I'm not naming names, but his initials are Mark Peterson, has been having a lot of meetings with lawyers. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered that boardroom, that casual oops, that smirk. And the feeling passed. By Friday, the first casualty was official. Mark's profile didn't just say open to work. It had been updated with that particular brand of corporate newspeak that translates to, I got fired, but we're pretending it was mutual. The acquisition talks didn't just cool down. They went into an ice age. Turns out that major corporations don't like buying companies whose intellectual property claims are shakier than a house of cards in an earthquake. Then the universe delivered its punchline. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn message that made me do a literal double-take. Carlos Vega, the Carlos Vega, CTO of Titan Systems, the kind of tech heavyweight that makes Fortune 500 companies nervous. The message was short, direct, and terrifying in the best way. We need to talk. Your work speaks for itself, and we want you to speak for us. Coffee tomorrow, Carlos. I stared at that message for 5 solid minutes. 3 weeks ago, I was getting laughed out of a boardroom, and now one of the most respected CTOs in the industry wanted to buy me coffee. The next morning, I found myself at Grind Coffee. Carlos walked in exactly on time. No theatrics, no power plays. He slid into the booth, ordered black coffee, and got straight to business. I read your work, he said, and those 4 words hit me harder than any performance review. All of it, the algorithms, the system optimizations, the database restructuring that saved your former company about $500,000 in server costs annually. Impressive stuff. Carlos Vega had read my code. We've been tracking the situation with your former employer, he continued. The acquisition fallout, the audit findings, the creative attribution practices. Industries smaller than people think. Here's what I'm thinking, Carlos said. We're launching a new division. Enterprise automation, AI-driven system optimization. We want you to lead it. Full technical authority, equity package, team building budget, and a salary that... He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. The number had more zeros than I'd seen outside astronomical calculations. It was more than my old salary, Mark's new salary, and my wife's executive package combined and multiplied. The best part, Carlos continued, we're specifically targeting the market your former company just lost. You'd be competing directly with systems you built, except this time you'd get full credit, proper resources, and teammates who understand what a Git commit is. One condition. You start Monday. Where do I sign? Carlos pulled out a contract. I signed it right there. As I handed it back, Carlos shook my hand. Welcome to Titan Systems. Let's go build the future. I built a team of people screwed over by bad management. Jessica Chen, fired for pointing out her company's platform, was held together by deprecated APIs. Marcus automated himself out of a job by being too good. Priya left after being asked to make AI more intuitive. David suggested enterprise software shouldn't torture users. Our setup was unconventional. My living room became mission control. The dress code was whatever makes you productive. We had more laptop stickers than a tech conference, more coffee equipment than most cafes. Here's the thing about building a team of underestimated people. They're hungry. Jessica architected elegant systems. Marcus built incredible deployment pipelines. Priya created machine learning models that actually learned. David designed intuitive interfaces. Our first prototype was ready in 6 weeks. The beta testing feedback was unanimously positive. Then, our first major client signed a contract bigger than my former company's annual revenue. When my former company tried congratulating us on LinkedIn, I replied, "Don't clap for the fire you tried to smother." 15,000 likes in 2 hours. Then calls started. Michelle from HR wanting to reconnect about consulting. They'd rebranded to Synergy Solutions. "We've been experiencing technical challenges," she said. Everything had fallen apart after I left. "Send me an email," I said. "I'll have my people take a look." My people. I loved that. I accepted a speaking invitation at a regional conference, 5,000 people. My presentation, From Invisible to Indispensable, Why Technical Attribution Matters. I showed everything. Code commits, timelines, revenue generated, losses after I left. 3 minutes of standing ovation. Someone asked what I'd say to companies with similar issues. "Talent is like water," I replied. "It flows toward opportunity and finds its level. You'd better hope you're not standing in the valley wondering where it all went." After my keynote, my ex-wife sent an email. "We were wrong. Can we talk?" She wanted partnership opportunities. I replied, "Nope," then posted a screenshot on LinkedIn. When they erase you, write your own script. 30,000 shares in 24 hours. 3 months later, Carlos dropped a bombshell. Titan Systems was acquiring Data Flow Systems, the vendor handling 60% of my former company's infrastructure. I was on their board now. The contract renewal meeting was poetry, same conference room where I'd been laughed at. Now I sat at the head of the table. Michelle was there, pale. The terms I presented were brutal, but fair. Their $200K annual contract became $800K. Michelle signed with shaking hands. 6 months later, I was closing keynote at the National Tech Leadership Summit. 10,000 people. Backstage, I spotted Michelle preparing for her panel on building resilient organizational cultures. "Michelle," I said, "before you go on stage, spell my last name." She couldn't. She'd been butchering it the entire time because learning actual names was less important than corporate buzzwords. On that stage, I told the story. A year ago, my boss laughed when I said I was excited about a raise. Today, I sign the checks for the systems they begged me to build. Talent isn't scarce because there aren't enough smart people. It's scarce because too many organizations are run by people who can't recognize it. 5-minute standing ovation. The most successful revenge isn't destroying people who wronged you. It's building something so successful, they have to live knowing they could have been part of it if only they'd been smart enough to recognize what they had. The man who'd been told his work wasn't worth a modest raise was now writing the rules for an entire industry. They lost the moment they decided I wasn't worth investing in. Some jokes take a year to deliver, but damn, they're worth the wait.